When a man inflicts pain upon you, your initial impulse might be to react immediately, to shout, to demand explanations, or to make him feel the same pain you're experiencing. But pause for a moment and consider if that's not precisely what he anticipates. He expects tears, endless interrogations, emotional messages brimming with suffering. He desires you to chase after him, proving the depth of your hurt, because that's how he maintains control over the situation and your emotions. Imagine, however, what transpires when you act in a completely opposite manner, when you refuse to play by his rules and deny him the expected reaction. It is at this precise moment that real transformation commences. Carl Jung asserted that a person's shadow manifests most vividly during periods of silence and introspection. By relinquishing the role of the injured and predictable woman that he has assigned to you, you compel him to confront the reflection of his own actions, stripping him of the familiar conflict scenario that served as his justification. Silence, when employed consciously, becomes one of the most potent instruments at your disposal. It creates an emotional vacuum, a space where the other individual is left alone with their personal demons. Jung observed that people subconsciously dread emptiness because it invariably leads to inner conflict, forcing them to confront aspects of themselves they prefer to ignore. A man who has caused you pain instinctively expects you to despair and react impulsively. This affords him the opportunity to justify his actions. If you weep and plead, he feels in control. However, when you simply withdraw without explanations, without attempting to reach out, without showcasing your pain, he faces an entirely new and disconcerting reality. He can no longer manipulate your emotions, undermining the very foundation of his behavior. The male psyche is structured in a particular way. Many men navigate through life believing they can hurt a woman and move on without serious consequences. This occurs because most women indeed behave predictably, pursuing, staging scenes, attempting to extract explanations. But the real turning point occurs when you refuse to participate in this game, when you completely remove yourself from the equation. The moment he realizes there are no more arguments, no more struggles, no more attempts from you to reach him, is when genuine remorse starts to brew. He presumed you would be predictable, emotional, and available like everyone else, always ready to vie for his attention. But when he realizes that you have simply vanished, leaving no visible traces of suffering, something within him begins to crumble. Men process emotions differently from women. If a woman typically heals her pain through tears, conversations, and expression of feelings, a man often tries to ignore, distract, and pretend nothing happened. However, when you completely cut off the flow of your energy, he loses the ability to simply sweep everything under the rug. He may try to pretend he feels nothing, but the absence of the usual chaos from your side forces him to confront what he has always avoided: the emptiness left by your absence. And in this emptiness, his shadow begins to grow. Jung explained that when a person loses control over another, when they realize that their influence has been abruptly halted, the psyche enters a state of internal conflict. This is the very moment when he begins to question his choices, reevaluate his behavior towards you, because for the first time, he faces the thought that he cannot simply continue to live as if nothing happened. However, it is important to understand this should not be a game or manipulation. It's about genuinely reclaiming your power. Too many women waste their life energy trying to convince a man to value them, spending days and nights explaining their pain to someone who isn't even listening. True power lies in realizing that you don't need his approval, his explanation, or his permission to move forward. The moment you make this decision, when you tell yourself that you will no longer give a second of your time, a drop of your energy, or a single tear to someone who failed to appreciate you, you take the reins of your life into your own hands. It is precisely then that he realizes something devastating. He truly lost you. And only then, when it may already be too late, does he begin to understand the true value of what he had. When a man sees that you are not just coping, but genuinely moving forward, flourishing and becoming an even stronger and more radiant version of yourself, that's when the burden of his mistake becomes truly unbearable. As Carl Jung said, the deepest changes happen not through external conflicts, but through internal upheavals, when a person faces the consequences of their actions in the silence of their own mind. Your silence and departure create precisely such a situation, a space where he is left alone with his thoughts, without the ability to blame everything on your emotionality or inadequate reaction. This is a moment of truth when masks fall and only the bare fact remains. He lost something valuable, and the reason for this is exclusively in his own behavior. The most important thing in this process is your own liberation. As long as you continue to participate in his game, your energy remains attached to him. When you take a step back, all this energy returns to you, giving you strength for a new stage of life. You cease to be a character in his story and become the author of your own. And in this lies the greatest victory, which does not depend on whether he realized his mistake or not. A person realizes the value of something only when faced with its absence, a real, irreversible absence that leaves behind emptiness. But the real turning point occurs when he realizes your absence in his life has not become a loss for you, but has turned into a powerful impetus for growth. He expected to see a broken woman, longing for the past, but instead faces someone who seems to have been reborn from the ashes. This image becomes unbearable for him. There is nothing more powerful than a woman who chooses herself. When you start investing in your own development, in your happiness, in your peace, he asked for the first time a question that never occurred to him before. Was I so important to her? Jung said that the human psyche falls into crisis when it loses the illusion of control. A man who caused you pain but was sure you would always be on standby suddenly finds himself in the power of doubt. He needs to believe that he was the best thing that ever happened in your life. But when he sees that your existence not only hasn't collapsed without him, but on the contrary has become brighter and fuller, the foundation of his ego cracks. And the most beautiful thing is, you're not doing this for him. You are not changing your image. You are not traveling. You are not working on your goals to cause his jealousy or regret. You are doing this exclusively for yourself because true transformation only begins when its engine is internal, not external. As Jung noted, the greatest victory of the psyche is gaining integrity without regard to other people's approval. Your success, your development, your self-awareness become living proof of a simple truth. He was never necessary for your happiness. And when this man sees that the woman he underestimated is now shining brighter than ever, remorse overwhelms him with destructive force. There is also a deeper psychological effect. Many women mistakenly believe that forgiving means giving a person a second chance. In reality, forgiveness is a gift you give primarily to yourself. Jung explained, true emotional freedom comes when we let go of resentment, but don't allow those who hurt us to take the same place in our lives again. Men do not learn from words, they learn from consequences. If he lied, manipulated, or betrayed your trust and you took him back without changes, he won't become better. He will just be more careful next time. But when he realizes that his actions had a real price, that he lost a woman who was truly worth something, that's when the lesson is learned forever. You don't need to be angry. You don't need to shout or prove anything. Just remove him from the pedestal on which he placed himself. Jung said, the psyche resists change until there is no other choice. When a man sees that the door he walked out of is now tightly closed, that he can no longer access your attention, your emotions, your life, that is when remorse hits him with full force. Many women fail precisely here. They continue to hold on to men who have already demonstrated their inadequacy. Letting go isn't weakness, it's a display of strength. Knowing your worth means not settling for less than you deserve. And when you walk through life with this confidence, without looking back, without allowing his actions to define your self-esteem, you don't just confuse him. You force him to face the most painful truth. He lost something he can never get back. When a man causes you pain, the instinctive reaction is to cry, plead, or even seek revenge. But these patterned actions only confirm his expectations. True power, the one that truly throws him off balance, lies in directing all your energy into something greater, into your own growth. Carl Jung said, true transformation begins when we stop projecting our pain onto others. A man who hurt you is sure you're stuck in the past, monitoring his social media, waiting for a return that may never happen. But when he realizes that your absence has become not a loss for you, but a liberation, something in him breaks. And that something is his confidence in his own indispensability. A man values only what he fears losing forever. As long as he's sure you're suffering somewhere in the shadows, waiting for his return, he doesn't feel the consequences of his actions. But the moment he sees that you're moving forward, that you're evolving, that you're shining without him, he faces irrefutable proof. His influence is over. And this is perhaps the most painful lesson in his life. Remember, your goal. Carl Jung explained that the male psyche is structured around a deep need for control and predictability. As long as a man feels he can influence a woman's emotions, manage her reactions, he doesn't think about the consequences of his actions. But when he faces your calm departure, without scenes, without reproach, he begins to agonizingly ponder. Was I really that needed to her? Did my loss become a tragedy for her or a liberation? This gnawing uncertainty is destructive to the male psyche. After all, every man subconsciously wants to believe that he is the best thing that happened in a woman's life. When he sees that you have blossomed without him, have become happier, more confident, more fulfilled, his entire illusion of significance collapses like a house of cards. For the male ego, there is nothing more painful than realizing its replaceability. Jung emphasized that true emotional maturity begins when a woman stops seeking confirmation of her worth in the eyes of a man and finds integrity within herself. At this moment, a magical transformation occurs. You are no longer a woman who was abandoned. You become a woman he lost, and that changes everything. Instead of plunging into the depths of suffering, take up sports, not to cause his admiration, but to feel the strength and beauty of your own body. Update your wardrobe, not to make him regret it, but to feel irresistible. Invest energy in your goals and dreams. Redirect all those emotions that you used to spend on him to your own development. When you start acting like this, something amazing happens. Your inner frequency changes. You stop vibrating on the wave of pain and despair and begin to radiate confidence and self-sufficiency. It's like a magnet. You suddenly start attracting people and opportunities into your life that you truly deserve. Your radiance becomes natural, unforced, not requiring viewers or approval. It is at this moment that he realizes with horror that he has lost something truly valuable. Not because you were playing some games or manipulating, but because your transformation turned out to be genuine, deep, undeniable. How many women spend years trying to prove their significance to a man who never learned to value them? But the real truth is, you don't need to prove anything. The most devastating answer you can give is to show all your beings that he was just a chapter in your book of life, and not the whole story at all. When he sees how you prosper without him, how easily you breathe in a new life, how his absence has not only not broken you, but has freed you, that's when the full depth of the loss dawns on him. And this has nothing to do with wanting to arouse jealousy or take revenge. It's a matter of your daily choice. Choose yourself again and again, no matter what. Jung taught us that true power manifests when we rise to a level of consciousness where other people's actions no longer dictate our emotions. True victory is not revenge, but a deep inner transformation. And forgiveness is not a gift to him. It is a priceless gift to yourself, freeing you from the heavy burden of resentment that we have carried in our hearts for so long. Men, according to Jung's observations, do not learn through words and lectures, but exclusively through the consequences of their actions. If he lied, neglected you, and you took him back unchanged, he won't become better. He will just learn to hide his flaws better. But when you leave without explanation, not giving a second chance, not staging scenes, that's when the lesson is learned forever. You don't need to shout about your pain. There is no need to arrange theatrical farewells. Your calm silence and absolute absence in his life will speak for themselves. He will understand your value only when he loses all access to you. Psychologists note that most men really try to return, but they are driven not by love, but by wounded ego. A woman who really knows her worth will never open the door to someone who has already proven their unworthiness. As Jung said, psychological growth begins exactly where we break the vicious circles of painful relationships. Don't let him come and go from your life whenever he pleases. End this cycle once and for all. Go forward, not to make him regret it, but for your own bright future. Because when you choose yourself, you have already won, regardless of whether he realizes it or not. When you choose yourself, that is the real victory. A man may realize that you have moved on and try to return. But the worst thing you can do is accept him as if nothing happened. Many women make this mistake. He apologizes, writes a touching message, pretends to repent, and suddenly gets access to your life again. Carl Jung warned, destructive patterns are broken only with a complete break in the cycle. If you allow him to come and go as he sees fit, You teach him that he can cause pain, disappear, and return without consequences. A man who knows he can always return will never appreciate you properly. The only way to make him understand your value is to deprive him of the privilege of having you in his life. This must come not from anger or revenge, but from pure self-respect. Jung explained, self-knowledge leads to individuation, the process of becoming a whole person without external validation. You can forgive him inside, wish him well, but that doesn't mean he deserves the same place in your life. Forgiveness isn't an indulgence for a fresh start, but a personal liberation. Reality is cruel. Men respect only what they can't get. When he realizes that the door once open is now tightly closed, he is forced to face the consequences of his actions. As long as there is the slightest chance of return, he will not feel a real loss. But when he realizes that your presence can no longer be restored, the blow becomes palpable. Jung noted a person changes only after realizing an irreversible loss. That is when reflection begins. Not out of guilt, but because the emptiness you left behind is not filled by anything else. Key moment. A man will change only if he truly cared. Genuine repentance is not just an awareness of loss, but a revision of one's patterns. But if he tries to return only because of the loss of control over you, he remains the same. A woman who knows her worth is not deceived by empty words. She understands that strength lies not in giving chances to the unworthy, but in moving forward without looking back. Tough truth, true transformation rarely happens because of the loss of a woman. Change is only possible if he encounters his own shortcomings. Jung emphasized that growth begins when meeting the shadow. For many men, the only way to see their mistakes is to lose what they thought was guaranteed. But your main decision to leave remains correct, regardless of his changes. If he needed to lose you to understand the value, then he never really valued you. Many women cling to men who have proven their unworthiness in every way. Jung called this a fear of the future disguised as an attachment to the past. Letting go is not weakness, it is a display of strength. It's a clear understanding of your own worth and a refusal to accept less. When you reconcile with the past and direct energy into building the future, you don't just heal, you become invulnerable. Final truth, your happiness never depended on another person. By acting with such confidence and self-respect, you don't just confuse him, you force him to realize the scale of the loss. Jung said, a person understands a depth only through absence. A man who considered you a backup option faces a cruel insight. That woman he knew is no more. You can forgive, but that doesn't mean reopening doors. Forgiveness doesn't justify the past or erase the pain. It frees you from the burden of resentment because keeping pain hurts only you, chaining you to a place where you no longer belong. True forgiveness isn't for him, it's for you, an act of regaining power over your emotions. This is the difference between a woman chained to the past and a woman soaring above. While one is stuck in grief, the other is freed. Men do not learn from words, they learn from consequences when they face the irreversible loss of what they considered a given. Your strength is in your ability to turn pain into fuel for your ascent. When you rise high enough, his repentance no longer matters. You're already where he can't reach, ever. When a man finally realizes that he has destroyed with his own hands what he can never return, an important psychological turning point occurs. At the moment when it dawns on him that the door that was once open to him is now closed forever, he experiences not just regret, but faces a cruel truth. Your indifference has become his harshest punishment. You can endlessly explain, argue, list all his mistakes, but until he faces the real consequences of his actions, he will never truly understand the scale of what he has done. Carl Jung repeatedly emphasized real changes in a person occur only when he is forced to face the results of his actions face to face. If you take him back too easily, close your eyes to empty apologies and unfulfilled promises, he will inevitably continue to treat you the same. Also, people begin to value only what they can lose. If he doesn't feel this loss, if he doesn't face its consequences, he will never learn to value you properly. Departure does not require theatricality and loud statements. You don't need to beg for closure or exhaust yourself trying to prove your case. It is enough to simply complete this cycle. Your silence will become the most eloquent answer. The male psyche subconsciously expects an emotional reaction. He expects you to fight for him, leave the door ajar in case he changes his mind. But when you disappear without explanation, leaving no loopholes, that is when he first feels a real loss. There is nothing more sobering for a man than realizing his influence on you has been erased without a trace. His word no longer finds a response in your heart. The truth of life is that most men do try to return. They always do when they realize that they can no longer perceive you as something self-evident. At this crucial moment, you face a choice. Return to a destructive cycle or firmly show that actions have consequences. Jung explained in detail, the human psyche is formed through recurring patterns of behavior. If you take a person back without letting him learn a lesson, you thereby confirm that he can cause pain, disappear, and return. But when you slam this door shut without exceptions, without giving in to emotional manipulations, an important turning point occurs in his consciousness. He expected your absence to cause despair in you, but instead he turned out to be lost and confused. In this turning point, when he finally understands that his actions had a real price, he first feels the full weight of his choice. You, instead of clinging to someone who doesn't deserve you, calmly go forward because true strength has always been in you, not in him. A man who knows he can always return will never take you seriously. The illusion of control is what keeps many men in a vicious circle where they believe they can hurt a woman and then bring her back when they please. But when he sees that the doors are closed forever, when he realizes that there is no way back, reality hits him with relentless force. Jung repeatedly emphasized a person learns only through direct experience, and there is no teacher harsher than irreversible loss. A man begins to respect only what he cannot have. If his repentance is sincere, it will be dictated not by the desire to return you, but by the awareness of the need to change. But if the change does not occur, if he continues to live as if nothing had happened, then your decision to leave was absolutely correct. Jung warned, not everyone is ready to face their shadow. Some people just don't want to grow up and change. It is not your job to carry the burden of someone else's immaturity. Letting go is not a manifestation of weakness, but an act of true inner strength. It is living proof that you respect yourself, know your worth, and refuse to be satisfied with meager crumbs of attention. Some lessons are learned only through pain. Some truths are reached only through loss. But your mission is not to be someone's teacher or trainer for emotional growth. When you choose yourself, when you go forward without looking back, you don't just confuse those who underestimated you. You prove it in practice. Your life continues to move upward regardless of anyone. True power manifests in the refusal to allow the past to determine your present and future. Jung said, to become who we truly are, we must let go of everything that no longer serves us. This also applies to those who failed to appreciate you. Many women mistakenly believe that male evaluation determines their worth. But the truth is that your worth has always been inside you and not in anyone's eyes. A man who truly deserves a place in your life is not someone who needs to be persuaded to treat you well, but someone who himself lifts you even higher. The irony of fate is that at the moment when he realizes you are no longer available, your energy no longer revolves around him, something inside him irreversibly collapses. This realization comes too late. That version of you that knows its true worth has already gone far ahead, and she will never look back because true victory is not in making him regret, but in you becoming absolutely indifferent to whether he regrets it or not.